Hey baby, connection, you are now live. Hi everybody. Connection, you are now live. Hi everybody. Johanna Medrana here with the last interview of the week. Friday baby. We are interviewing Emma Arnold from Boise, Idaho. And I'm so excited to talk with her. I wasn't in town when she headlined the Independence, so I'm freaking honored first and foremost, and thankful that she took the time. I mean, having Emma and Sean back to back is like, I don't know, pinch me. What am I doing with my life? Hello, Diana Graham. Let's see. So Emma co-founded and is the director of 208 Comedy Festival and Comedy Fort, both two comedy festivals. Can't wait to talk about that.
Guys.
I'm like a very shoot, that's on. Embarrassing. I was watching some of her sets before this because it's good to stay on top of it. But yeah, she's co-founder and director of those comedy festivals. I'm just like a little tiny ant in the Motor City Comedy Festival equation, so I can't imagine actually finding and directing. I am but a tiny producer. But yeah, she has been mentioned in Forbes as one of the most hardworking comedians out there today, which is really impressive. Forbes, I will never be on there. I'm a janitor. Look at me. Look at the way I'm dressed. She not only is a successful professional comedian, she has 3 sons. She's a single mom with 3 sons. She's a beekeeper in fucking Boise, Idaho. I'm just like, how do you do it all? I can barely water the ferns. She's a published author. Her book and her podcast go hand in hand. It's called The Book of Holy Fuck. I'm very excited to learn about that. But yeah, I've watched a little bit of her material. Diana Graham, yes, bees. We love the bees. Not the killer hornets, though. Those are dangerous and scary. But yeah, a lot of her materials from the heart. She covers a lot about, mental illness and the struggle of just being human. So I'm so excited to talk with her, talk about comedy, talk about, how she got to be the comedian that she is. So let's get her in here, guys. Go live with Leave Hamster. Love it. Make sure this is turned on. Waiting. Patiently. Hopefully this works. Hopefully this is not another Mike Bobbitt situation where we had to emergency get an iPad and his phone wasn't working and we couldn't see him, and James Couture was there for that. I'm sure he remembers the disaster that it was. Didn't make my bed today. Feeling a little rebellish. Okay. Maybe it'll work if I call her. Add. It did work out. It did work out, thankfully. Love me some Mikey Bobbitt. The last one of the week would just give me a hard time, I'm a half hour away from no responsibilities. That's life, I tell you. Oh, man. Yeah, I'm trying to call you, too. Weird. Okay. Let me just restart the whole thing, and we'll do it. I'll be right back. It'll be okay. Okay, and we're live again. See if this works. Have her find the chat. Have her come in here. I posted that great intro that I just gave because I'm not doing it again. All stuttery and shit. You guys know me. Okay, here we go. She's in here. We're gonna turn it up. This works. Connecting. Yay! Okay, it worked. Hello.
Hi, sorry. It just when I would hit send a request, it would say your request was not sent. So I don't know what that was about.
All good. We started over. We're here. We made it. You look great. You're glowing.
Oh, thank you.
So
Thank you. It's the lighting in this room. It's great.
yeah, and all those plants back there it looks amazing. Um,
Yeah, I have a ton of plants.
it's good for your soul and for your air. So good job.
hmm I
I
think it's always important to be trying to keep something alive in your house. Like,
yeah,
whether it's a plant or a cat or a child, you need something to be like, oh, that's right. I have to feed this thing or
yeah.
do whatever.
Exactly. I have two dogs and a bunch of plants and a vegetable garden and the whole thing. I don't have bees though. I wish I had bees. How are the bees?
They're good. Actually, this is the first year in probably, I don't know, 5 years maybe, that we haven't had pretty large die out in the winter. Like the last few years have been really hard to keep these, and we've had pretty massive die out. And this year,
Oof.
everybody made it through. And so we made it through. We aren't like a big operation. We only have 6 hives, but we're going to make splits from that. We're hoping to go, like we usually run like 10 hives-ish. So yeah,
So
everybody made it and
cool.
everybody looks healthy. So now it's just we got to wait for the hornets to come through, apparently, the murder hornets.
Oh, those fuckers. I hate them. Well, let's talk some comedy, man. Like
Sure,
let's start right like from the beginning. Do you want to talk about maybe like the first set you ever did? If you have like a funny nervous story for that one?
sure, sure. Actually, yeah. The first time I ever did comedy was at. It's been interesting to watch comics in this quarantine, sort of like my LA and New York friends are like losing their minds, and they're like, I haven't done comedy in 2 days, and coming up in Idaho. When I started, there was like one open mic a month,
Yeah.
and so you and like we would have to travel for stage time, and you sort of got good at like making that time really matter. So the
Yeah.
first one I ever did was uh, this open mic called the Dog Dick Fuck Around Hour and a Half, and
Love it.
yeah, and it was at this place. It was called, I believe, the Red Room at the time, but it's this punk rock bar that's had a bunch of names in Boise. I got arrested there for curfew when I was 13 and for sassing a cop, and it felt sort of first full circle to do my first open mic there.
Yes.
And I wasn't nervous. Weirdly, the first time I had been doing storytelling shows, and I had been an MC, and I taught beekeeping classes, so I had like stage time, I guess. I was used
Yeah.
to being in front of people. But I had prepared this story about how we had some friends who all went to Burning Man that year, and instead of going to Burning Man, we bought a new mattress, and we were like, this is it. Like, this is the death of your 20s, is being like,
Yes.
I just need a good night's sleep. And I think it was a 3 or 4 minute set, and I got laughs the first time. And so I did what I think a lot of people do. Your first time, you're like, well, that was pretty easy.
Yeah.
And then I ate my dick for a year
Yep.
after that. Like, I just had a bad set every time. And I couldn't figure, like, it was so hilariously infuriating looking back on it. Like, my third set, I remember I had notes and my hands were shaking so bad. And I was like not getting laughs, and I couldn't, then I think you spend, if you get laughs in the beginning, it's almost worse because then you spend a year chasing that same high. So,
Hmm.
but we didn't have a lot of open mics, and I, from the very beginning, because I was divorced and I was a single mom and I didn't have a career, I right away was like, I guess this is my career and I'm going to make it work. So I started featuring probably within 6 months of my first open mic.
Hell
And
yeah.
like I said, I had stage time, but there weren't any, there were opportunities for like really bad road gigs,
Hmm.
and I just like charmed my way into anything I could get on and just started like making money right away just because I
Yeah.
had to, just because I was broke and
For
needed
sure.
needed the $45.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, absolutely.
but, and
So,
I kind of got my start in like really rough rural rooms,
yeah.
just like I did these things called the triple runs, which a lot of Western comics have done, which I'm sure in Michigan there's you probably have a booker with a similar name and a
Hmm.
similar run that is like, you may or may not get stabbed here, like
Yes.
they were pretty rough.
Yeah.
So, and I didn't actually work with a woman for like the first couple years, or, other than like locally, there were a couple great women
Yeah.
around, but like on the road, I didn't get to work with a woman for so long because all the old road dogs were like dudes in their 50s who'd been doing it forever, and
Hmm.
who, had never, who kind of had never bothered to or couldn't move past like
Yeah.
that tier of comedy. So yeah, it was quite an interesting beginning for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
pretty country.
Yeah, I mean, those rooms honestly do make you such a stronger comic. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, we have those too, like middle of nowhere, Michigan. Are you kidding me? Like, it's either going to be like
Yeah.
the best crowd ever because that's the only thing happening in town. So they're like ready to
Yeah.
laugh. Or it's going to be like, oh, I can't talk about anything because, I'm not up here preaching about Jesus Christ himself. I don't know. It can go
Yeah.
either way. But yeah, either way, it's good.
Yeah.
It's good for you as a comic
We
for
had,
sure.
it's so formative. And I feel like that's one reason no matter where I've gone since then, I've never been intimidated by things because I'm like, I have done a room in a town of 3,000 people and the bar was half Mormons, half meth heads. And you got to
Yeah,
find middle ground there, like it's
exactly.
really like, it's definitely was very formative and it toughened me up. It also, I spent about 2 years sobbing in hotel rooms every single night that I was on the road, just, getting harassed by sound guys and bartenders and just like and I like put so much love and effort into in the beginning, like
Hmm.
every little joke I wrote was like a nugget of my soul. And then you would go to some small town. Like one of the first times I went to this small town and I did a set, that was very feminist and forward thinking, and they hated me. They weren't just quiet. They were like telling each other how much they hated me. No longer even heckling. That's how much they hated everything I was doing. And I got off stage and I was kind of just like demoralized, but just in that like, well, tough, that was a bad crowd, whatever.
Yeah.
And then the headliner got up and he opened with an incredibly racist joke and crushed. And I went and like, part of me was relieved because it's like, you were never winning these assholes over
Right.
and you don't want to. Like, let this guy have them. But part of me was just like, I went down and I sat in the green room and just cried and cried because I was like, I thought what I was doing in the beginning was like, it was art,
Yeah.
and it mattered. And then the bars kick that out of you. But then after that, I did go back and do that town a few different times. And I finally became a strong enough comic that I made them meet me. And I've kind of, you eventually, I think, get to a point where it's like, you don't try to meet them when they're wrong. You just are like, no, then you can be wrong. I'm still
Yeah.
going to do my thing up here.
Exactly.
And a lot of times they will respect you for it or try to murder you after.
Right.
It's a real toss up
Toss
with a
that
small
coin,
crowd like
man.
that.
Yeah. So when did that kind of like switch on for you? When did you just like realize like it's okay that I didn't grab them?
It was, I did this show repeatedly in Pendleton, Oregon at this casino. It was a rough room, is a bar kind of buffet style thing.
Mhm.
And you're really far from the audience. There's like several tiers. There's TVs everywhere that they don't turn off. And I was doing a set, I was headlining during the I don't know how to say it, you guys. I just added so many A's onto that. The basketball thing
Yes, I know what you're saying.
is a championship, and it was packed full of construction workers and stuff just there to watch the game.
Yeah.
And then I'm doing comedy in the background, and people are yelling like, "Shut the fuck up!" And I was like, "They're right, like they just came here to watch basketball and eat dinner, and then
Yeah.
I'm supposed to do this." And so I kind of just was like, "Why are you trying to still do this?" So I just started commentating the game, which mostly still annoyed people, but at least like the few people who were paying attention like kind of chuckled and they were like, oh, okay, this is better. And I think that was like, then the game ended and I got to do like 20 with everybody's attention.
Okay.
And I got them. Like it was so fun and it was so funny and I really got them. But afterward I was like, you got paid your $250 either way. Like I sort of had the
Yes.
realization like, it's okay for you to have a bad day at work. Like, I think that was the time when I was like, if you know you're getting your paycheck at the end of this, why not make it comfortable for yourself?
Yeah.
If they already are like distracted or annoyed or whatever, I was just like, well, then that time is for you. If
Yeah.
like they don't want you there, then you can, twiddle your thumbs. And I do that sometimes, like if I have a rowdy crowd, if I get into like a bar, and sometimes the dream is you're always doing shows for people who came to see comedy, specifically came to see you.
Mhm.
That's the dream. But of course, a lot of times what you have is you're doing comedy for a bunch of people who wandered in to get wasted. And then here you are,
Exactly.
So when I do that, a lot of times I'll just start out like very chill, just like if I end up doing 2 jokes, whatever, like, you know, especially if a crowd is like, and if I don't get them, I don't know, that used to kill me when I was a younger comic. Like, I always have said that a mediocre set is harder for me than a bomb. Like like where you almost had them and you were just like, what was it? What was that next best thing I needed to do to get them?
Yeah.
To get them. But now I kind of started to be like, I don't know, you know, not everything has to be the best set that you ever did.
Yeah.
You know, like one of my comedy mentors gave me such good advice, and she said, sometimes you give them 40%. If they're meeting you 40% of the way, give them 40% back. Like, you know, sometimes you do just have to say, like, this is my paycheck. And it's not always a crowd that like, you're moved, they're moved, you guys keep in touch afterward.
Yeah.
And I think in the beginning it's hard to let go that high, and you want it every time. It's
Absolutely.
so fun when it's fun. It's so fun.
Yes.
And sometimes you have to just be like, yeah, sometimes it's not the greatest time, you know?
Exactly.
So.
Yeah. I'm a couple years in, and I would say I was like right on the cusp of like beginning to really accept the fact that I was not always going to win. And I'm a sore loser. And I take everything to heart, man. I take everything to heart. So for me to like, to you know, everybody bombs. Professionals bomb. It happens. Everyone does it. So for me to have those losses sometimes, I'm like a big brat about it. But yeah, I was on the cusp right before quarantine of like, it's okay. It's not a big deal. You know, move on. But then quarantine happened. So, you know, are you staying creative? Like, are you writing and getting some content out? I know you have a podcast that you run.
Yeah. You know, I kind of had been planning to tone down touring somewhat this year anyway. Like, for a lot of years, I have toured like a mad woman, you know, and this last year was like kind of starting to get a little burnt out on it. And so I had already planned, I have a Patreon that's doing pretty well. And I wrote a book that I'm releasing in chapters on the Patreon, but I also paint and write music. I do a lot of things. So I just kind of put up the Patreon, and I was like, I want to share things with people that aren't necessarily comedy and that are a lot more vulnerable, you know, like, I like the Patreon because it's like a little bit of a paywall between you and the general public when you're just like being your real self. Like comedy for me, people are always like, oh, your comedy's so vulnerable. And I'm like, oh, no, this is nothing. This is,
right.
This is like the thoughtful veneer I've attempted to put on the madness that is actually happening in my life, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, I try to keep it very honest and true, but yeah, I definitely have stayed, and I've been writing a lot, and I don't know. I mean, writing a lot, but also deleting a lot, which I think people are feeling really pressured to create like stellar content. And somebody wrote me the other day that they were like, you're still writing on Patreon, and I'm so jealous. And I'm like, oh, for every 20 pages I write, I deleted 100, you know, like it's been, I think right now it's more like process. And that's usually for me creatively. I do like a lot of like chaotic creating, and then I have to like hone things down and be like, this isn't garbage, that's not garbage. Jokes with everything, I'm kind of like that.
Wow, it's so crazy, man. Like, I can't imagine having 3 kids, bees, plants, and traveling, and having like this successful podcast and that outlet to like put your art out there like that is just crazy. How do you stay organized? Like, how did you finesse that to like work perfectly with your schedule?
Oh, well, it's not organized at all. Like, I am a very organized person. As a mom, you kind of have to be, especially a single mom like you. I am pretty organized, but a few years ago, I have a very manic depressive cycle. And I always have since I was a kid, and I fought it for years, and I've tried medicating it, and I've done, you know, I do 12-step meetings. I do all of these things to keep myself in check. And a couple of years ago, I started to be like, what if that is just this ebb and flow is who you are? And if you can, like, I've started trying to find like a healthy way to do both of those things so that when I have that manic energy, I just am like, okay, and I'll paint like for 2 days, I'll just paint like crazy and write like crazy. And people are always like, oh, you're so prolific, you write so much. And I write most of my jokes in 1/2 hour. I'll write like an hour of jokes. Like, I'll just sit down on a mania day and be like, brr, 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 and I'll tweet 300 things. Like, if you've ever seen, I'll go like weeks without tweeting, and then all of a sudden it's like joke, 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 joke. And then I tend, like, a lot of times I'll spend like a lot of time in a, you know, quote unquote depressive phase, which I've started to think of as like a cocoon phase. Like, sometimes I can't talk to anybody. I get very introverted. I'm like, I don't create anything for weeks, months at a time. And I've started to be like, that's okay. That's your looking out the window time.
Yeah.
Like sometimes I just need this quiet time to just sort of look out the window and just to not produce anything or think anything or feel like I have to like connect with people. Like, I think there's a fear in comedy that like people will forget about you. And it's like, that's okay. You'll remind them. That's
Yeah.
okay. You can ebb and flow. You can, like people will remember. And so yeah, I think that's part of it. And also, when I let the chaos take over a little bit, like, sometimes my house is like immaculately clean and other times it's, 3 kids messy. It's a little crazy. But I've also started to just be like, that's okay too. Like the organization, when I get sick of it, I organize everything and everything's tidy in my life, not just like clean, but like artistically everything. And then I let it kind of unravel and fall apart to a point where you go like, oh shit, I better do this stuff again. So
right.
I think part of getting older, what's nice is you sort of like accept your rhythms.
Sure.
I think I was like, I want to be a morning person. I want to be this kind of person. And eventually I was like, Emma, you are never that person.
Yeah.
You're never, like, I think I've just started to like accept those patterns a little easier.
Absolutely. Dude, you're speaking right to me. It's great. And I think you're speaking to
Good.
a lot of people, especially in quarantine where we have this time where all we're doing is thinking. I mean, that's all I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
I shouldn't speak for everybody, but I would imagine, especially comedians, with our mental illness, with our up and downs, with not being able to work properly, really,
Yeah.
people are still doing Zoom shows and all that stuff. I'm not doing it. I can't force myself to do it. Are you doing shows like that?
No, absolutely not. And like, no disrespect, like I understand people still got to make a living. And a lot of people, like I have friends who are like, this is what I do instead of drink, like this is the itch I scratch. I have to have this. For me, they're like not particularly satisfying. The Zoom shows, like it doesn't scratch that itch I want. And also, I think my process is different. Like a lot of comics, how they work material is open mic, open mic, open mic.
Mm-hmm.
And since I never came up like that, I never had the luxury of being like, I have to test this joke at 5 open mics. I just do that in my head. Like I'll run a joke in my head kind of until it feels like I've got the rhythm down. And there have been jokes that like, I did the first time, it's the same after that. Like, like I did it one time and I never tweaked stuff because I had run it so many times in my head. It was like, no, that's how I want to say it. I've got it. Other jokes have taken years of tweaking and you never know. So yeah,
absolutely.
I know people are I'm sad to see people be so hard on themselves during all this because this is an unprecedented catastrophe in our lifetime. And I feel like I've talked to so many friends, and my partner the other day was saying like he felt like he wasn't getting a lot done creatively. And like another friend was like, I don't know, I just feel guilty because I'm so sad all the time. I'm like, no, it's sad.
Yeah.
Like, be thrilled that you're not one of these sociopaths out, protesting, and instead that you're like, I am affected by the loss of people in our collective, human world, and I am feeling the collective suffering. Like, I think maybe this is because I'm a beekeeper, but bees communicate in a way we don't really understand. It's a mix of pheromones and movement, but also just sort of this collective thing that they do. And I think we probably have something like that too, which is why you have things like sort of enter the zeitgeist all at the same time. And I think everybody is feeling that right now. Everybody is feeling collective grief and collective fear. And I mean, we're watching the crumbling of our democracy. You don't have to write a screenplay right now. It's okay to just sit
Seriously.
and stare out your window.
Yes.
And it's time for you to be creative. You will be. You will be. Like, I think it's, it's, of course, you're always working on your 10,000 hours and you're trying to become a master, but it's also like part of the reason I have so much material is because I started comedy late and I had lived through a lot of shit.
Yeah.
And I had a lot to talk about. And I think
for sure.
People forget that, you know, they forget that that's an important part of it.
Yeah. When did you start?
Oh, people get so mad. I think I started 8 or 9 years ago is all. But like I said, I didn't do the usual like couple of years where you're like open micing and trying to get host spots. Like I kind of started and then was like, boom. And like I had been doing storytelling shows and had a lot of stuff like stage time and stuff, like I said, but But yeah, not as long as I think people would assume, you
Yeah.
know. Um,
It happens
but
differently for
I,
everybody. You know what I mean?
yeah, I don't know why it's funny. People are like, don't apologize for that. But I
Yeah.
always feel a little weirdly self-conscious of it because, comedy is one of those things where like the old guard is very like you have to pay your dues and you have to do these steps and you had to feature for this long before you could headline and you had to headline these clubs over these clubs. And
Yeah.
if you get bumped up a line, sometimes people get kind of frustrated with you and you're like, I don't know. Sorry.
Yeah.
I just needed the money really bad because I had
Exactly.
to pay for my kid's dentist. So
Yeah, right. Well, so when you first started, were you like, this is what I want to do and I want to make it a job? Was that like instant for you?
well, I started kind of under duress because I had just gotten separated and I was a stay-at-home mom and we had 3 kids and I was really like, I have to find a career. I didn't finish college. I have no job experience. And so I was just kind of like, I hadn't worked full time in a very long time. And so I was just I just started doing open mics and when I got separated and I was kind of like, well, you're really good at this. Like it was one of the first things I had done where I just felt like it clicked and I just
Yeah.
was like, oh, you're good at this. You could make this a career. So I did. And, I think I did approach it very artistically, but I also was very practical. Because I had to be. So from the very beginning was like, I knew I had to be really professional. So
Yeah.
I came out of the gate, like I had a website and business cards and everything within 6 months. I was like, at festivals, handing my stuff out and like
Exactly.
trying to get booked. And,
Yep.
and then I went through I've a couple times gone through a bit of a crisis with it where I was like, wait a minute, you started this not because it was a dream, but because it was kind of like, shoot, I guess I need to support my kids. So I've paused a couple times and been like, is this what you really want to do? And, I go back and forth because I love comedy, but I struggle with the industry a lot.
Yes.
The industry itself is, I, I don't know. I feel like a lot of times I have different goals in it than you're supposed to have. And, I don't know. So I've gone back and forth in it a few times. I really do love the comedy part of it. And I've talked to other comics about like what keeps you going. Like I've never really cared about the fame or the money beyond, just supporting my kids. But I do get really excited about like, even though I'm like let go of a bad set, I do get really excited about like the psychology of things and like that joke landed in this room and I told it the same way and it didn't land in this room and why. Like I love the impermanence of it.
Yes.
I love I think that's one issue I have. Go on, my dog is being bananas. Get out of here. Nobody's talking to you right now. He's almost died a few days ago, so now he's been very dramatic. He's been very I need wet dog food and all the attention in the world. But yeah,
awesome.
I think this break has been interesting for me too, just because I was already planning to take some time off the road. I have an album coming out in a couple weeks,
Mm-hmm.
my fourth one, and I had started to kind of be like, you may not be able to tour again for the foreseeable future, and so I've been trying out like I'm not doing the Zoom shows, but I've been doing Twitch and like
Yeah.
some other stuff just to kind of feel out like because for me, what I love about comedy every time, good or bad show, is I'm always into connecting with people.
Mm-hmm.
That's all I ever really want is I just want to connect with people. And whether it's 8 people or 80, I don't care. Like I always just love that. And I've missed that. Like I have missed that feeling of like getting to sort of click with the crowd and, getting to know like, ooh, this is a shared experience.
Yes.
No one ever gets to have this again.
Yeah.
So I have missed that.
And also like being the conductor of the energy in the room is so fun. Yeah.
Yeah. My, Dom, my label, Blonde Medicine, Dom, who runs it, he was like, wanted me to call my album Control because a lot of the album is a bit about like my issues with control and stuff. And he was like very into it. And I'm like, no, that's already a famous album. I'm not going to copy that. But like, he's right. Like, I think the control aspect for me, and that's actually this month's Patreon theme is control. And I've been sort of exploring that.
Yeah.
Because it is an interesting, you look so chill up there and people think that you're like such a fun, like, laid back.
Not a care in the world. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, no, anybody who does comedy does it because they're a control freak. Mm-hmm. And they like to be the person in charge of the conversation. And it's definitely, you know, it's not a laid back, like no matter how many tie-dye pants somebody wears, it's definitely, we're all a bunch of control freaks.
I know I am. So yeah, you're preaching to
Yeah.
the choir again, my friend. I do want to talk a little bit about the 208 Comedy Fest and the Comedy Fort. Did that kind of like fall into your lap, or was that something that was like a goal of yours, or how did that come about?
Yeah, so Comedy Fort it's part of Tree Fort, which is a big festival here, which is wonderful. And they had approached me 4 or 5 years ago and asked if I would help sort of revamp,
Hmm.
because they were mostly using locals and stuff. And so they were like, can you help us get bigger names and stuff? So I took that over because wanted to like, I didn't have any of my own money at the time to bring people in. So I was like, cool, I'll use Tree Fort's money. So
Yeah.
I was able to help them diversify their lineup and do a lot of things. 208 started because I had attended a bunch of festivals and kept seeing over and over, you know, that I'd be like one of two women on the bill, you know, and both of us white women. And I
Hmm.
would talk to the festival coordinators and be like, oh my God, diversity is so important. And people just would be like, and then I ended up getting into a bit of an online tiff with a festival because I publicly called them out.
Good for you.
Um, yeah, yeah. Oh, I was in Michigan actually. I think I was headed up to Ann Arbor to a club up there, and I remember I tweeted something about it, put my phone away, and I came, or it was on Facebook, came back and I had like 1,700 comments, and it like was one of those where it just blew up, and it was mostly men telling me how fucking stupid I was for bitching about this poster that only had two women out of 50 on it, and no black people, I think, whatsoever.
Mm.
Um, and so everybody in the comments was like, well, if you hate it so much, start your own festival and book women. And I was like, yeah, why
Okay.
don't I do that?
Yeah.
And so my partner Dylan Haas and I, we were like, let's start a festival where we can book comics where we can, for one thing, book a really diverse lineup.
Hmm.
But also it was so important to me to offer. I had been at festivals and been really terribly sexually harassed, and I had been assaulted by a male comic,
Hmm.
not at a festival, but still. And I was like, I want to offer a safe environment, as safe as I can offer, so women can come and do comedy and just have fun. Like,
Yeah.
I think a lot of people don't realize, like, the male experience of comedy is a lot different. Like, you know,
Yes.
you know, in the beginning, I didn't get invited to I mean, I'm preaching to you, you know exactly. I didn't get invited to parties. I didn't get invited to hang out afterward.
Hmm.
Everybody tried to fuck me. Anytime I was hanging out with anybody, I had to be like, oh, no, 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 I'm not fucking you. No, I thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
You know, and I was so polite. I was so sweet, naive, and polite back then. Now I would be very different. But I wanted a festival that was at least half women, that had a really diverse lineup, and partly so I could bring those voices to Boise. I think one of your biggest like contributions to comedy that you can make is elevating voices that you know should be elevated, that you know people need to hear those stories, but also that you're like, this person is so funny,
Yeah.
and you know why they're not getting booked, you know?
Absolutely.
So that was why I started 208 and ran it for 3 years. You know, Dylan and I ran it for 3 years. Interestingly, we had already decided that we were probably going to take this year off. We hadn't made a decision yet. Comedy Fort was coming up. I stopped doing Tree Fort this year because I was too busy. So Dylan was still running that, but I was like, I'm too busy right now. So, but we had already been like, let's take a year off of 208, because for me, like the running the festivals, it had started to hit a point where at the last 208, Comedy Central came out as
Hmm.
industry, and they ended up like talking to a bunch of comics and accepting scripts, and like all these comics made amazing contacts. And then Comedy Central to me was like, oh my God, thank you so much. You know, you like helped so many people's careers, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, I have got to start doing that with my own career. Like
Yes.
I've been like, you know, helping all
Hmm.
these baby birds for so long. And I was like, I got to get to a point where, like, you know, I live in a 2-bedroom apartment with 3 kids. We share a bathroom. It would just be nice to get to a 2-bathroom situation. Like, I don't need to be famous, but 2 bathrooms would be fantastic. So after
Yeah.
that, after this year, I don't know, you know, luckily we didn't put you know, tons of money and work and time into getting everything ready. We were really lucky. We were already kind of like floating the idea of skipping
Right.
it. So that was lucky. But yeah, I'm glad that I did it, because I do feel like I, you know, helped change the landscape and helped sort of like
Absolutely.
build, like you know, I have been to festivals where they're like, we changed the way that we book because of you,
Yeah.
because of the way, because we would even bring people from other festivals as industry just so that they could see like
Yes.
our lineup and be like, you're not, because, you know, the white guy thing is always to be like, but we'll be sacrificing quality. And it's like, but you're not, you never are.
No.
And I think I hope at least it helped change things a little bit.
Absolutely. It seems like you did. I think you did your job. Yeah, I honestly got a little teared up when you were talking about like raising people's voices and stuff. Connor Mead and I are the only 2 women producers for the Independent Comedy Club. And I started like Honorary Mentions Comedy was like, we just run bar shows, but I make it a point to make sure it's ran by women, people of color. Like I'm all about that here in the Detroit scene. And lately in quarantine, I've really honestly have been forgetting who I am and what my purpose is in the comedy scene. So for you to be like saying all that stuff is just like, that's the shit I needed to hear. So thank you for saying that and for doing all that work, because I fully believe in all of that. So no wonder Forbes called you one of the hardest working comedians, because you have been killing it. So thank you for doing that.
You just made me teary. You're making me cry.
Like 2 female comics just waving their tears. Ridiculous. Okay, I do have a couple more questions for you. If you did have any advice for like maybe like younger you or anyone in my position as like a young female comic, as far as advice when it comes to being involved in those festivals where you're not seeing people of color, you're not seeing a lot of women, you are getting harassed, you're not being taken seriously. Like you're like, oh, I didn't know you were going to be funny because you're so pretty. That's a direct quote from my life. So if you have any advice for young female comics just starting off as far as any of that, you know?
Yeah. First of all, God, I wish I could go back in time and be like, do not put up with any of this. You do not have to. I mean, it wasn't just a journey for me as a comic. It was a journey for me as a woman. It's taken me a long time to be like, I'm a human being and you don't get to say that shit to me.
Yeah.
And I was so broken down when I started comedy. You know, it was lucky thing for me that I did, because it really did build my voice and build my spine and help me like learn to stick up for myself. But don't put up with anything. You think like you're going to lose gigs. The guys, okay. When I was sexually assaulted, afterward, a bunch of male comics took that comic side. Of those people, I'm the only person still doing comedy. That's how it is. The guys sexually harassing you right now will not be doing comedy. Or maybe you can help them quit, you know, like, you know, I think like I felt like I had to keep all these secrets for these men. And like, I thought about one of the things in quarantine, I was like, I could quit comedy and write a tell-all book that would put my kids through college right now about comedians people think they love, you know, like it's a really rough industry for women. And I would say don't put up with anything. And then number 2, the other thing I wish I could go back and tell myself, and what I would tell any female comic is, I don't care if it's real. I don't care if you feel it. Act with self-confidence, because every dude you are around is so self-confident, and they're just talking over you on podcasts and getting the gigs you think you aren't ready for. And I would just tell women, like, just have the self-confidence of a dude and just waltz into places. Like that's one of the reasons I got booked as much as I did, is I would just go in with a firm handshake and act like I was the most famous person in the world.
Like you were supposed to be there, because you were.
Yeah. And men would do it and get booked. And so I was just like, well, I'm going to do it too. And I think as a woman, you're always sort of like, it's so funny how many women I see constantly checking themselves for arrogance when there is none, and being like, oh, and I shouldn't be that. I mean, like they'll say something nice about themselves, like, oh, I had a really good set. I mean, I could have done this better. I could have. And it's like, no, don't do that. Like comedy will tear you down itself. You know, it'll keep your ego in check. For the people I see that it doesn't, I'm always like, incredible. What kind of childhood created this? Because for me, comedy just constantly reminds me how inept I am.
I think about that all the time. I'm like, how do you not have a care in the world? But yeah, it's a lot of it is white men, but yeah. Yeah. I'm always like constantly doubting myself and wondering if I was rude to a server, you know, like I'm like always policing my own behavior, in a way that I don't think a lot of male comics are. But at the same time, I feel like is part of the reason why every woman I meet in comedy, it's so funny. Also, the third thing is, if you're a woman comic and a male comic tells you that another lady comic is a ball busting bitch, you're going to love her.
she's going to be your best friend. You're going to meet her and you're going to be so inspired by her and you're going to be like, oh, what an incredible person. Because that happened to me over and over where like a bunch of male comics would warn me about a female comic and be like, oh, she's such a bitch. She's so stuck up, da, da, da. And then I would meet her and I would be like, she's incredible. She just has boundaries and she's not letting you sexually harass her. And she's telling you to get the fuck out of the green room, open micer. So you think she's a bitch. And those ended up being some of my best friends or women who people warned me about that now I'm like, this person is, you know, just a tiger and is so funny and smart.
Yes.
So befriend those women.
Link arms with those women. Yes. We need to find each other and hold each other up always. I do want to talk a little bit about the book of Holy Fuck. If you want to kind of, you know, explain to everybody what that is, where that stemmed from, like within your soul and, you know, how you enjoy doing it all the time.
Well, I wrote a book called The Book of Holy Fuck it started as a memoir, and then as I got deeper into it, it sort of became just this, it became so many things. It became like I was doing audio stories for it and recipes and like poetry and art, and it just got bigger and bigger. And actually a publisher had approached me and like heavy, like they were into me. They flew out from New York. They were like, we really want your book. And I was like, cool. And then when I described it to them, they never talked to me again. So I was like, oh, okay. And I sat with that rejection for a while, but then eventually I was like, maybe it's not a book. Like maybe it's still kind of in this birthing process. So I made the Patreon because I wanted to share what I had already done with people. Like I have a storage shed full of paintings the book is broken up into themes or chapters essentially, but each chapter has like an erotic story, a recipe, and I haven't been giving everything every month. So like the first theme was love, and I did poems and an audio recording, like a lot of different things on the Patreon for that. But I sort of see it in my mind as like in the end like a touring show that is like part gallery, part TED Talk, part live show, part comedy. You know, that is sort of like this like broader thing, and it took off. Like I was really like, this is something you're probably doing mostly kind of for yourself. Like it's like your middle-aged lady meltdown, you know, and you're just like, look at my paintings, you know. But and I was
Have you seen my cat? Yeah.
yeah, exactly. I was just so like, oh. But I started putting it out, and I got a really good response right away, and people were very supportive of it. And I felt like the Patreon's been cool because it's like the people who get you really get you sometimes, you know, they're there for all of it. They're there for my jokes and my middle-aged lady nonsense and my mom recipes and like my very horny stories. And I just really appreciate like somebody who is like a full fan, you know, like that really kind of means a lot to me. So,
of course.
So right now I kind of have warned people that like the Patreon I think will be a temporary thing. It's sort of just me getting all this stuff out and getting eyes on things and sort of sharing a lot of stories. I have a very colorful past, we'll say, and it's hard in a comedy set to get certain things across that I really do want to share more of, like the mental illness aspect and like the being a survivor aspect. But like, you know, I can make jokes about those, but people are like, we wish you wouldn't. You know, you will sit with you through it. But like, this was a deeper way to connect with people who I felt like that's my biggest complaint with being a comedian is it's funny to me how many comedians I know are also like incredibly talented musicians or artists or dancers or, you know, like really well-rounded people. But if you're a comedian, it's like people expect you to just be funny. That's all they want from you. And that was one thing with the Patreon. I was like, you know, I started as a writer. I started in storytelling, and I wanted to be able to sort of like get these fuller parts of myself out. So I think in the end, what it'll be is a table book that is like a physical book that you buy at a live show where I do like a mixture of storytelling and comedy and a podcast too. Yeah. So that's what it is.
I love it. So
it's a lot. You can see why a publisher would be like, okay, goodbye forever. We're ghosting. We're out of here. For sure. I could see why they would do that.
whatever, fuck them. You didn't need them anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? All right. Well, if you did have maybe like a couple sentences of just like overall advice about the hustle of being a comedian and really like
Mm.
finding your voice and finding, I guess, a quote unquote purpose, because I feel like you're a comic who has a purpose, and in your art and in your jokes and in your podcast and this great book that you just described so beautifully. And I know a lot of people are like, well, I'm just here to be funny, but it's kind of like a breath of fresh air to talk with a comedian such as yourself, because you have this platform and you're really utilizing it. And I really respect that. So if you
Oh,
have
thank you.
any sort of advice for young comics coming up, just in a couple sentences about the up
Yeah.
and down roller coaster that is stand-up comedy.
Yeah. I would say, I think one thing I wish I had been is I think comedians are impatient people. That's why we do something where it's instant gratification. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's fairly true of a lot of us. And I think that just understanding that there's no rushing
Yeah.
finding your voice and not being down on yourself for the times that it's not clicking. Like I think comedy does this thing where it's like you'll have a plateau for a while and you'll be like, I'm not getting better. And then you'll all of a sudden you'll bomb. From that, you'll learn 50 things and you'll have this massive spike in talent. Then you'll kind of drop off for a while and then plateau. And that's how it's always been for me, is very up and down.
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay to be bad at something, like in anything. I wish people would accept that more, that like it's okay to struggle. The struggle is part of it. The struggle is, if it was easy, everybody would be a comedian. It's like, honor the struggle. And that's one thing I think as a woman, it's better now, but like the thing that makes the struggle worth it is the comedians that you get to be with. Like occasionally I've been in a car with 3 comics at a festival at 2 a.m. in a Del Taco drive-through, everyone just being the funniest anybody's ever seen. And I'm like, this is fucking crazy. This is your life.
Yeah.
Like it just gave me chills, because that's what I miss about it. Sometimes
Those
you
are the
just be with these
moments.
funny people and you're like, fuck, is this it? Like I get to hang out with these people who other people get to listen to on podcasts, but these guys are just my buds,
Yeah.
like that's really cool. So let those be the moments that make, sitting in the back of some bar, just watching and when your friends eat shit, laugh with them. When you eat shit, let them laugh with you. Like, don't try to do it alone. It's not as solo as an endeavor as we'd all like to think. So, and elevate each other and take care of each other and kick people out who suck.
Yeah. Bottom line.
There's enough of us.
Yeah.
There's enough of us. We don't need people who are hurting other people in the industry. We've had plenty of that. So
absolutely.
I'm so excited for you. I think you're so great, and this was such a good interview.
Thank you.
You said so many nice things that I have been struggling with my purpose for a little bit, being like, is your voice necessary in comedy right now? Like, what are you saying? Like, do we need another, mom episiotomy taint joke? Yes, America. Turns out we do. I'm sticking with it. So
yes.
So thank you for this. This was really fun.
Of course. I do have one last question, if you don't mind. I'm always curious. Ahead. It's always my ender at the end of these. What are you the most proud of thus far? Like, what is an accomplishment that you are like, wow, like really, really feeling that one?
Definitely my comedy special, because I had 2 albums and I wanted to do a special, and I approached a couple, well-known comedians who I was friends with, and I was like, I want to do this special. I need a little money. They were so kind, and they gave me the money to do this special. But like, part of it for me is that was during one of like the hardest points in my life. I was actually, when I filmed the special, and I hope this doesn't take people out of it if they watch it, but I was really suicidal. Like I was heartbroken and kind of done. And for me at the time, now I kind of am like, holy cow, I can't believe it was there. But in my mind, I was kind of just like, you need to film this special and wrap up some loose ends, and then you can go. Like, it was kind of like, and I look back, and when I watched that special, for a while, I couldn't even watch it, because like, even if it would like pop up when I was doing stuff on YouTube, I would just be like, ugh, because I can see how deeply sad I am.
Yeah.
But then later I started to be like, look how, and I never use this term, but like, look how hard you crush, even when you're heartbroken. Like, look how I was proud of myself for how hard I showed up for those people. And like, I don't really
And showed
do
up for
comedy.
yourself. You showed up for
Yeah,
yourself.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like, I was so proud of myself that even at my lowest, I was able to like put together something that has brought a lot of people a lot of joy. Like,
Yeah.
and hundreds of thousands of people have watched it, and I get messages like every day from people who are like, I just found you. That thing you said in the beginning about beavers, blah blah blah, that made my day. And it's just like, to me, I think that that's crazy that I had made such a beautiful accomplishment kind of in this like darkest, saddest, and most unhappy point of my life. And I think
Absolutely.
I don't know. I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud of that.
As you should be. Well, thank you so much, Emma. This has been amazing. Tell if you want to do a quick plug, where can we find your stuff?
I'm on Patreon under Emma Arnold, or you can find it on my Instagram. And there's different tiers. It starts at $5. $5 gets you everything except for a couple like smaller things. Well, not smaller because one of them is a sexy photo set, which people are a big fan of. So I guess that's apparently one of the better tiers. But I got to feed some kids, you know.
Yeah, totally.
But also, I'm on Twitter and Instagram. I have a Twitch where I do mom stuff, which people seem to find kind of comforting. I do like, I don't know, I like make chili, fold laundry, and people just sort of hang out. So
Who doesn't
yeah,
love chili?
yeah, yeah. So yeah, find me on stuff. It's I've been and I stay safe, everybody, and
Yeah.
take care of each other. And this was really wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you for doing it. We'll talk to you soon. And when the world goes back to normal, please come back. We would love to have you.
Oh yeah,
Please stay in
absolutely.
touch.
Detroit. Last time I was in Detroit, I have to tell you, it was one of those times where you're like, this is why I do this, because I love Detroit and I had such an amazing time and people took me to museums and I ate food and I was just like, it was definitely a week where I was like, this is why I do this. I love this. So
Yes.
thank you, Detroit. All right. Well, thank
We'll
you.
talk to you soon. Keep in touch.
All right. Bye.
Bye. Oh man. Woo! That was my first time getting teary-eyed during a fucking interview. Emma Arnold, ah, I don't know what to say. Thank you for watching and supporting these and supporting the independent and just watching me stutter over my words every fucking day, Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern. I have been Johanna Medrana. I'll be back on Monday with a brand new comedian. I post the lineup on Sunday and then I'll do another post on Monday. So if you miss it, whatever. I know there's a lot of content going on right now. You guys enjoy your weekend, do the things, make some chili, send some sexy photos, be like Emma Arnold because that is a sweet baby angel girl. Okay, I will talk to you guys soon. Peace out. Bye.